All right, good evening. Today we are discussing a very interesting topic, the Christian citizen. You know, so first of all, this conversation is we have a lot of us are not used to being we are not used to being citizens, especially from this part of the world, from this country, Nigeria. You know, it's citizenship. What does it entail? Are we even citizens? Is our citizenship dependent on what the state does for us? And by the state, of course, I mean the government. What is the relationship between a Christian and the state? Now, it seems like a simple question. The Bible says we are not of this world. So apparently, since we became Christians, we are citizens of heaven on this earth. So if we're citizens of heaven on this earth, are we qualified to even refer to ourselves as citizens of this earth? If the Bible says that we are not of this world, will not it be contradictory to say that since we are not of this world, we are heavenly citizens? We are aliens here, we are visitors, we have no right to demand how the world should interact with us. Hmm? Well, let's get into the scriptures and see where those who have gone ahead of us, how their citizenship played a role in how they interacted with the state. I'd like to read the book of Acts chapter 16. Acts 16:35. And when it was day, the magistrate sent the officers, saying, let those men go. So the keeper of the prison reported these words to Paul, saying, the magistrates have sent to let you go. Now, therefore, depart and go in peace. But Paul said to them, they have beaten us openly, uncondemned Romans. That right there is the citizenship card. And Paul said to them, they have beaten us openly, uncondemned Romans, and have thrown us into prison. And now do they put us out secretly? No, indeed. Let them calm themselves and get us out. I love Paul. And the officers told these words to the magistrates, and they were afraid when they heard that they were Romans. Then they came and pleaded with them and brought them out and asked them to depart from the city. So they went out of the prison and entered the house of Lydia. And when they had seen the brethren, they encouraged them and departed. Friends, in as much as we are representatives of heaven, in as much as the world, the system of the world cannot deliver the peace that we desire and seek from life. We are citizens of heaven. But as long as we reside here, there is a system responsible for our interaction with the state. And by state, I mean the government of wherever we reside in. You know, when Jesus encountered the subject of tax, and they had asked Jesus if it is right to pay tax. And Jesus had asked that, whose state is on the coin? And they said, it is Caesar's. And what did Jesus say? He said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God. Now, even the Bible explains our as citizens in the states that we reside in and what our interaction with the government should be. And I think uh, uh, Acts chapter 5, I'm just going to try and Acts chapter 5, yes. Mm, hmm, not Acts. Let's see, First Peter 4. You know, where the Bible talked about how, as Christians, the Bible even says it is God that puts the government in place, which is interesting. That is, I know some people would rather argue. How do you mean God put this government in place? Oh my God, how can God put this government in place? But it is what it is, if I say so. You know, I'm trying to look for a scripture that just highlights our role, as Christians and how we should interact with the state. Mhm. So just give me a moment, we gotta find it. Acts 16. But let me dwell on Acts 16:35 that we just read and how Paul. So in this passage, Paul was arrested. Paul and Silas, they were in prison and they were beaten. And then, but the people who beat them didn't know they were Roman citizens. So in as much as Paul knew that he was not of this world, in as much as Paul knew that he was an alien, yes, because he's a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, but residing on earth temporarily, he, he understood his citizenship and he placed a demand on his citizenship. He was a Roman. Now, what is the weight of your citizenship as a Nigerian? The weight of your citizenship as a Nigerian is very light because our nation is unique. So it's not quite unique, but it has gaps and flaws because not everyone's citizenship, even though that is abnormal, which is one of the many absurdities of our nation. The citizenship of people, the weight of people's citizenship differs. There are people who, if they were being robbed, if their house were being robbed and the place they call to the police will get there in 5 minutes. And there are those. that if they place a call to the police will show up the next day after the armed robbers must have operated and left. Then they will come and arrest the people around in the area, you know, because of the state has refused to play its own part. We can see the drive sometime in the year how the state was driving taxation to the point where even our churches they started teaching us how to file our tax. Even our churches, they started teaching us how it is important. They were lecturing us on taxation. They were bringing tax officers to come and enlighten us. In fact, some of us we had the opportunity to listen straight from the CBN governor, I mean the Minister of Finance himself, to address us on this tax thing. And they said all these beautiful things. But trust the Nigerians, oh, we are quite skeptical. Oh, there is a broken trust between the state and its citizens, and it is justifiably so. How many of you would readily believe a Nigerian politician? If a Nigerian politician tells you that it is money, my friend, I would suggest that you go outside and look at the sky if it is indeed money. Now, our interaction with the state as Christians, what does it entail? The reason Paul could place a demand on his citizenship is because he held the side of the bargain, and it is ideally the government, the Rome, the state hold its end of its bargain. So his citizenship carries weight. Now, in a country like Nigeria where our citizenship carries no weight, you may ask yourself, what do we do? You pay tax, but you don't get the dividend of the tax. You pay tax. Oh, everybody pays tax, especially if you have a bank account. So don't worry, don't overthink it that do I actually pay tax because I've not been filing tax. You pay tax. Yes. All those things when you make a transfer of 10K and you get charged 15 naira and the person receiving a 10K does not receive a complete 10K. Yes, all those things is going to the states. Do you have good roads? Do you have clean water? Education, you have to pay through your notes. In fact, they expect us to praise them that they give us loan to go to school. So when now the way the country is, you pay for your electricity, by via solar, you go upgrade, you sponsor yourself through school. In fact, you always say that after school you have to now start paying back, and then what they did, you provide your own security, you fix your own roads, you sort your own health care, but the state just keeps taking and taking. And you wonder, how am I as a Christian with my Christian values, with my Christian principles? How do I interact with the state? So you see that as Christian citizens in Nigeria, we cannot we cannot leave the subject of politics outside of our interaction with the state. As a matter of fact, politics is how we interact with the state. Now, when I say politics, I am not saying that go and contest go and contest for chairmanship, local government chairman, House of Rep, and then you add honorable in front of your name. You're not a politician in Nigeria, they have to be honorable in front of your name, and of course. Whether the honorable is actually honorable, I leave that to your discretion, right? But You see the process that determines the political direction of this country, that's politics. So whether you are voting, whether you are paying attention to the kind of people filling leadership position, that's all that is politics. So whether we like it or not, politics affects us. So as Christians, we cannot fold our arms where we do not get involved in the political direction of our nation. When we don't do that, we are not being Christian citizens. Your Christian citizenship does not only end as you paying tax. It involves you it involves you participating in the political decisions of this nation. Let me give us an example. Right? In the United States of America, when they started pushing, the whole LGBTQ agenda, and they started pushing it, and they started pushing it, and the church was silent. After a while, it began to affect the church. Now, this is one of the intersections between the church and the state. The Supreme Court. So the Catholic Church in the United States used to have this adoption program where they give families, they give children to families for adoption. And the ideal then was marriages between a man and a woman. The Supreme Court of the United States then ordered the Catholic Church that they should start recognizing a man and man, a woman and woman family. So the Supreme Court was telling the church that the children you give out for adoption, you need to start giving man and man family, woman and woman. The Catholic Church, because that was a clash with the values of the church, the Catholic Church had to shut down that adoption program entirely. And these are the issues where we just want to live holy lives, where royal priesthood, we leave politics to dirty game. Let's leave it for those who want to play it. There is no way that we won't be affected by politics. Now, in Nigeria, we are at a point where political discourse and participation is so stressful. Reason being that those who maintain the status quo have no intention of the status quo changing. So all of the things you need, all of the things for the righteous. And now when I say righteous, for lack of a better word, I refer to Christians. So when I say Christians, I know there are Christians in politics already, but their voice is still stifled. It is not loud enough. So when we begin to ignore what's going on, we don't, nobody's interested in voting. This phase, the phase where Christian citizens need to rise. We need to go through that stress. So if it requires you buying data to apply for your voter's card, we need to consider it as our Christian responsibility. Because if the Bible says righteousness exalts a nation, and that is not our testimony, then we are not, then something is not adding up. Because why am I here? Why are you here? And it is not translating into national transformation. The tool of national transformation, in my opinion, the most pronounced tool for national transformation is politics. Because just with my, as a politician, my policy can transform a population that I personally cannot reach. One policy that I'm able to drive can affect the lives of millions, millions of people that I may not know or may be able to reach personally. So, as Christian citizens, Paul had to place a demand on his citizenship because he has actively participated in the interaction between the state and himself. Now, the state has made it difficult. By the state, I mean Nigeria. Nigeria has made it difficult for us to have an, an equal interaction where I hold my end of the bargain, you hold your end of the bargain. You see, sometimes when I read news or I encounter news concerning our nation, I understand that it just gets frustrating and tiring. I mean, IMF comes to say that the government has spent over 8 trillion naira outside of the budget. You hear that kind of a thing and you just stop. You're just for friends. The truth is that it seems like least to be ignorant of these things. Like, what I mean is that it feels as though it would have been better if I didn't know this thing. I'll be happy, I'll be fine, I won't be stressed. But the fact is that whether you know about it or not, the effects will come down to you. This is a government where they've used national resources of the nation as collateral for loans for the next 10, 20 years. Some of them would be long gone, meaning that they don't care about the future, about our future and the future of our unborn children. So it would be a level of foolishness if, as Christians, we come, first of all, mentally, we come to convince ourselves that that is how the nation is. It cannot change. We just have to accept it. No. That is the first step to refuse to accept the absurdity. See, I understand how Nigeria works. I understand that when you go to vote, political talks will be released to go and disenfranchise people, fight, steal ballot box. Policemen will probably be there and not move a finger, and all of that. But the fact is that the way the people maintain the status quo are fighting and putting in the work to maintain the status quo, we Christians need to also begin to actively fight to change the status quo. And the fight doesn't have to be physical. The fight can be conversation. You see, when you speak with people who are supporting the way things are in this country, a lot of them do not know any better. See, there's something exposure does. There are people who just travel to a neighboring African country. They go to Rwanda, they come back, and there's just this hatred they have. There's just this hatred they have for the government of Nigeria, and they're like, were you asleep before? But that's what exposure does. Now you see these people, the people who maintain the status quo. I admire their work rate. I'm telling you, they've been pushing this thing. You see what they've achieved, the negative achievements they have achieved. They've been going at it for decades. They've been going at it for 10 years, 20 years. You see this guy that they call the master strategist while he was governor. He would bring people like him, people with values or without values like him. He pulled them together. People who they collectively agree that the way to go is to pie, is to loot the country dry, is to steal the commonwealth of Nigerians. He pulled them together and they began to work together. He began to lift them, put them in certain positions. And he has done that work diligently up until now. Then there is us. And then there are people who expect that a political party that is like a year old would come and wrest power from the incumbent. A miracle can happen, but there's also international politics because the Western world is heavily involved in our democratic system. So the fight is long term. This thing we are doing, these conversations we are having, we are having it. I have said it over and again that this conversation is largely or primarily targeted at Nigerian Christians. And that is because, like I have said over and over again as well, that all of the flaws, all of the challenges that we see in our nation boils down to the fact that most of us can be born. See, people with integrity in this nation, they are in the minority. They are, in fact, they are a dime a dozen. They are so few that if you find somebody who has integrity, anybody that you can take his word for it, his yes is yes and his no is no. If you find that kind of person, grab him, hold him, because you lock him in a vault, because that person is rare. But that is not how it should be. You see, this Christian life, which is my point and which is the burden I have, is that why maybe you don't have to, maybe you don't really when you think about it, is it that this Christian thing we don't understand it? Why are you a Christian and you are comfortable with certain things, no values, no principles? Is it a lack of knowledge? I know it could be that. Or is it a way our society has accepted these things that those that we look after as models, they have dropped the bar. They dropped the bar. There are so many charlatans in the church. Oh, so many charlatans in the church. Where more than ever, it is important that we give ourselves to study. It is important we come to know God ourselves. Oh, maybe if we were in the times of Moses, things may have been different. I'm telling you. Where maybe one pastor collects envelope so that he doesn't speak truth to power and then the earth swallows him. You know, maybe things will be different. But now that there is grace, we have abandoned that ancient practice of holy living, that ancient practice of purity, that ancient practice of values and principles. They are non existent to the point where, even as a Christian, when you live for what God lives for, when you build on values and principles, other Christians will judge you unrighteous. Other Christians will find you abnormal. Imagine as a Christian, imagine as a Christian, you go to church and then it's Thanksgiving. and a couple of young boys with sagging pants and dreadlocks. I'm not profiling anybody. Mm-mm. I'm just saying that that is like their brand identity. And they come to church to do Thanksgiving with their Benz and their Lexus and their Lambos, and they're throwing money up in the church, spraying their pastors. Most of the time, the rest of us in the church, and the fact that that kind of a thing can happen in a church and people will be there till the service ends, it is indicative that we have missed it. It is indicative that the people who are there, they are not frowning upon that act, not because they see it as wrong. They are not, they are there to witness it because they desire the same. They crave the same. You see, there is something in Psalm 73. It is tagged a cry of Asaph. Asaph was the musician, and he was penning down in Psalm 73 how, you know, when you separate yourself from God and you look at the world, especially the world we live in Nigeria, Asaph was saying that why does it look like the wicked, they are just they are the ones enjoying life? Why is it that politicians, despite all the curse, I am sure that if you were to collate the curses that Nigerian politicians receive on a daily basis, Atlantic Ocean will not be able to contain those curses. They receive curses on a daily basis. Or if your the father is the Nigerian police, no shades. Oh my God, you need to get to your loin because Nigerians do not have prayers for you. Nigerians do not pray for their police officers. I can tell you that. Oh my God, if you are the son or the daughter of a Nigerian police officer, my God, I my good wishes are with you. What? Why does it seem as though, despite those curses, they steal so much money and get away with it? There is no consequence. They even live long. Have you noticed that Nigerian politicians live long? They live right old age. They, they live long. In fact, there are. I mean, I am speaking freely because I believe it's like a closed meeting, right? I understand what's going on in my society. I am not. See, there are people in the early 2000s coming up, 2004, 2003, when Yahoo, that internet fraud, for those who are not from Nigeria, when internet fraud started gaining prominence. There are people then who used to make money. They were making so much money that they were social media Yahoo boy celebrities, of which their grand patron, Hush Puppy, is doing J time. Colin Fenwache is doing jail time at the moment. And there are more like that. I can remember some, B Naira. These guys have been driving Benz, have been making money since till now. They are still making money. They've not done jail time. In fact, they have evolved. They are now businessmen, cryptocurrency businessmen, real estate muggles. Most of us can be forgetful. So Psalm 73, Asaph was trying to, he was just contemplating that it's as though the wicked, they are the ones enjoying good health. They are the ones that can afford HMO. They are the ones that can afford good cars. They're the ones that can afford security detail. In fact, when they are going, there's the Hilux in front and then there's Hilux at the back. While we, the righteous, we can't afford to call police to come and, be our security and be following us with gun everywhere. But, those that are into fraudsters, those that are into fraud, those that are into kidnapping, those that are into smuggling, those that are into creating fake alcoholic beverages. They are the ones making all the money. They are the ones buying the houses in Banana Island, and then they've left a Cotton and a Yanopaja for the rest of us that are the righteous. Asaph was just crying that. What's going on? Then for me, my righteousness is as if the reward I'm getting is soft. It is suffering. Me, I cannot afford private hospital. If I go to Lutz now, by the time I book appointments, they will tell me to come back October of 2027 before I can see a doctor. And then there's the unrighteous, the fraudster who can walk into a co-hospital. And in fact, he can even have a specialist flowing from India to Nigeria to come and attend to him. In fact, they can even bring the hospital to his house and set up a clinic in his apartment and treat him. But Esther came to realize that as soon as I came into the sanctuary of God, Esther realized that the death inheritance he could have is God. Friends, God is our inheritance. And it will feel as if that is vague and it is not material if you really don't believe this Christian walk that we have been called to. See, we have been called to a certain kind of life, and it is your will. It is a choice. That is why for you to be saved, you have to believe and you have to confess with your mouth. Romans 10 verse 9. It is your choice. You have to believe. You have to believe. See, when Jesus came, before Jesus came, the Jews were expecting a Messiah. True or false? You can respond in the comment section so that I don't feel like I'm just talking to myself. Before Jesus came, the Jews were expecting a Messiah, were they not? They received prophecies, and I had prophesied. I want you guys to respond. Thank you, Lover, for responding. They were expecting a Messiah, right? But it wasn't. So the Messiah they were expecting, because the Jews were under Roman rule, Roman oppression. They were under Roman oppression at the time. So when they hear or read of a Messiah coming, they're expecting a warrior, somebody who is skilled at war, a master strategist. You see what I did there? They're expecting somebody who would come, convert the people, and then take the war to Rome and defeat Rome and set the Jews free from Roman oppression. However, the wisdom of God is foolishness to man. What Jesus came to do was to reconcile us to the Father. What Jesus came to do was to seize authority that the first Adam had wielded to the devil. Jesus came to seize that authority to return it back to us. And that is why he is not the second Adam, he is the last Adam. In fact, I feel like a lot of Christians don't even understand the basics of their Christianity. Just because you were born in a Christian home, you were born into a Christian home, that's how you become Christian. You've not come into an understanding of this life that you have been called. You don't even understand why Jesus had to die, why he came. Because tell me the truth, somebody hanging on a cross with nails pierced in his wrist and ankle, hanging on a tree, does that look like victory to you? Tell me. If we look at it logically, does it look like victory to you? If somebody that is your Messiah, you see him hanging on a tree, Does that look like a victory to you? So that is why the wisdom of God is foolishness to man. You see this thing that we are doing, this Christian work, a lot of people, they see us as fools. It makes no sense to them. How much more, and if those are outsiders, there are people within the folds, within the body of Christ, who have not even taken time to understand this Christian work that they've chosen to be a part of. That is why it is absurd that you are a Christian and somebody is coming to buy your votes. You are a Christian, but at work, you pad the budget. At work, you are the one in charge of the company's diesel. So there is still 100 liters of diesel left. But you lie to the management that diesel has finished. Then you carry the diesel and go and sell. And you are making money. In fact, some of us, from that money, we still pay tithes in church. We sow seed. You will call pastor and tell him that pastor I just sent you, something light for the weekend. And pastor will begin to pray for you and you'll be like, Amen. Amen. I receive. It is a spiritual absurdity that in Nigeria, have you seen what it's like on Sundays? Churches are packed full on Sundays. But through the week, it is all manner, the fruit that is being it is far from Christianity. Run a poultry and be outside the country and just hire Nigerians, hire workers and don't overlook them. In fact, hire them from church. It reminded me of this story that I heard then. Back then in the 90s, in deeper life, companies will come to look for workers in the church. Why? Because they expect, even the world expect that because we are Christ-like, they have expectations of certain strength of character from us. So organizations will come to the church and it will be announced in church that there are job openings in here, there are job openings there. They will beg Pastor Kumuyi that their job openings should send his members. After a while, the company started reporting, giving a different report to Pastor Kumuyi. That the members they are sending, they are stealing money, they are impregnating staff, they are padding budget. After a while, the organization stopped coming completely. That if this is what the church is producing, we can as well just look elsewhere. And this shows the rot among those Christians. Meaning that sometimes it is painful to hear, but our leaders, our political leaders are a reflection of us collectively. So even if we begin to get this right, which is my desire, which is my burden, that if as Christians we live up to our values, our principles, that ancient practice of fearing God, have we forgotten how Christians became Christians? Christians did not call themselves Christians. Christians were called Christians in Antioch. It was people that called them Christians because they behaved a certain kind of way. They behaved like Christ. Can you boldly say, can you beat your chest and say that anybody who sees me will know that I have been with Christ? Do you conduct yourself in a manner that people will know that this guy he has been with Christ? If you cannot, and if people cannot testify of the strength of your character, then you need to come back and sit with God and go back to your first love, the love of Christ. You can't be a Christian and be comfortable being a liar, being a cheat, being a fraud. In fact, before we even begin to call it out, see, we need to we need to express our Christian values so much that everybody else, we begin to help the world redefine what is normal and what is abnormal. Do you know that as a Christian, if people are comfortable, if you're a lady, a Christian lady, and people who sleep around, or married people who sleep around, if they're very comfortable coming to you to tell you that, or you can have sex, it's no big deal. If they're comfortable around you, in my opinion, I think it is okay to make them uncomfortable. Why, why is somebody shaming you that how can you be a girl and you've not had sex before? Or how can you be a guy and you're in the office? You're not doing small things on the side. You're not doing things on the side to bring in money. You're not hiding company property. You're not no, no. How can you be a Christian? You find somebody's phone, you boarded a bus or a cab, and you find somebody's phone. So it is absurd that the first thought in your mind is not, I need to return, I need to return this phone. It is absurd. Because if you're a Christian, you enter a bus and you find a phone or somebody's wallet, the first thought in your mind is, how should this thing get back to its rightful owner? That should be your first thought. It is painful because in countries like Japan, who are not Christians, that is their first thought. If somebody finds property that is not his own, he would rather look for how to get it back to the owner or take it to the police. And the police will ensure it get back to the rightful owner. And those are people who are not even Christians. Why are you a Christian? You drink a bottle of soda and you throw it on the road. It's not the point of all your education. What is the point of your education? Because this is basic. These are things they've been telling us in primary school. That when you eat a biscuit, you throw the wrapper and dispose it properly. You throw it in the bin. Primary school. How come that till now, some of you have MSc, PhD, some of you PhD in the works, but when you eat a biscuit, you throw the wrapper on the floor, and then you are angry that when it rains, everywhere is flooded. All the biscuit and the wrappers you throw has blocked drainages. Why are you as a guy? Why are you as a guy? Just because you can easily maneuver your third leg, you just bring your thing out by the road to urinate in the gutter. Just because it is easy to maneuver it. It is weird. It is weird. What is wrong with looking for a bar or a restaurant and ask to use their restroom? Ladies even do that more. I mean, because for ladies it's a bit more complicated when they want to use themselves. But for guys, because it's easy to just maneuver, you know, you just you just stand by the roadside on the gutter and just ah, you see this Christian walk, it is a calling. It is not meant for only pastors. All of us are pastors. All of us. It is meant for all of us. We need to live a certain kind of way. This is interesting that when Jesus resurrected, the clothes was neatly folded. The robe with which Jesus was wrapped, it was folded. Come on. We are Christian citizens, and our Christianity must be at the front of us, not behind us, in everything we do, in the workplace. And that is where Christianity is coming to now. It is not about building churches anymore. The Christianity is needed in the dark. The Christianity is needed in the world. Your Christianity is needed in the world. All of us in church, we are all Christians. We are all lights. We use lights to finish ourselves. Our light is needed in the dark. Our light is needed in darkness. When you bring a lit candle into a room that is well lit, what is the value of the light? That light, even if it's a candle, as small as it is needed in darkness, your light is needed in the world. Your light is needed in the political party. Your light is needed in that office, that filling station where it's the normal thing. That filling station attendants, they would order for 5,000 naira fuel. They would pump breeze and pump fuel of 3,000 naira. It is normal. They will tell you that the money is not enough. Why did you accept the job? Did they force you? This Christianity thing that we are doing, it needs to carry weight. It needs to carry weight. We need to build on values and principles. And we are the next generation of parents, meaning that we must hand over, we must hand over a better Nigeria to our children than we met it. We must, we must. Friends, we have come to the end of our contemplation today. And my charge is that as a Christian citizen, we must place a demand on our citizenship. Even when the state is yet to hold their end of the bargain, we must fully participate in the political direction of our nation. A good place to start is to obtain your PVC. A good place to start is to start screening the candidates, the people contesting, read about them. Don't let them use advertisements, propaganda, because it is a war of information now. The world we live in is a war of information. If you are not informed, in fact, it's not about informing, it's about misinforming at this point. Things are not what they seem. All our newspapers, our media, they are compromised. For you to get an information that is actually true, you need to read in between the lines. You need to understand. You need to know the CIA. You need to read about them. I'm reading a book about the CIA now. I'm reading it on Internet Archive. Archive has some rich books. I can't borrow it, but I'm reading it online. These guys are they are thought towards us, the West. The thoughts of the West towards us, they are far from good. They are very, very far from good. They are very far from good. So when things happen the way they are happening, there are a lot of things we don't know. Because these guys, they're the ones that own the media. Yes. So when a big politician decides to host influencers and journalists, do you think it's for your own good? When the United States embassy begins to host influencers, tell them they want to train journalists. What training do they want to give journalists? They want to help, they want to use you. Because that's actually an intelligent way to fight. Use a black man to deceive a black man so that they won't see you, that you're the one pressing the buttons behind the scene. It is about interest. Oh, it is about interest. But we have an edge, and that edge is we are not just citizens, we are Christian citizens. That is our edge. That is our edge. Friends, is there anybody who has a question or who would like to